Welcome to the Wordy Pair Podcast, your go-to hub for all things writing, world building, and the occasional dive into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We're breaking down the barriers between you and your next great story. Whether you're a seasoned scribe or just scribbling your first sentences, we've got something for you. We'll be discussing everything from crafting compelling characters to dissecting the good, the bad, and the downright bizarre in the world of fiction. Okay, this script says you guys are eccentric. Isn't that just a 3-syllable word for weird? No offense. So, whether you're in need of inspiration, a good laugh, or just a couple of weirdos to keep you company on your writing journey, you're in the right place. Thanks for tuning in to the Wordy Pair Podcast.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Wordy Pair Podcast. As always, I'm Rudy.
And I am Justin.
And today we're going to talk about, well, a bad science fiction book.
Lay it on me.
Yeah, well, I guess it's technically going to be like a half-blind review. I actually reviewed this on my own personal channel a while back, but I think it'd be fun to have some of your input and see how ridiculous some of these things seem to be to you, So the book we're talking about is The Object, Hard Science Fiction by Joshua T. Calvert. And my first thing that I'd like to note about doing hard sci-fi is that it is not necessary to put the word hard science fiction in your title.
Yeah, not at all. I am in full 100%
Please,
agreement.
in fact, do not do that, because it makes you look like an English as a second language author.
Is that the case here?
I mean, his name is Joshua Calvert, so I doubt it.
Eh.
Not a lot of Joshua Calverts.
I don't know. I get a lot of calls from people named Robert with a very heavy Indian accent.
I don't think they're telling you the truth about their name.
That might be the case.
And of course, it's possible that Joshua T. Calvert is a pen name for like a, I don't know, Jamlamlamlamlamlamlam.
Which I believe is Swedish?
I deliberately made it to be non-identifiable ethnicity.
And you nailed Swedish, so...
All right, well, I guess Swedish is a non-identifiable ethnicity.
Yeah, that's the second time they'll be canceling us, just for the record. We've
well, you know, it happens.
We haven't been keeping score lately, so...
So, this book, I can't
This
believe
is your
it.
three-body problem, isn't it?
It is, yes. And it's, I mean, thankfully, I think it was way shorter than Three Body Problem, but like, holy cow, this is like a book that was written by someone who had like a bad dictionary definition of what hard science fiction is, and then wrote that. It's, just to start, it's incredibly bland and not engaging at all. Like, the first half of the book is about, like, there's this thing in space, and it's flying towards Saturn. And people are like, what is this thing in space flying towards Saturn? And instead
oh my god,
of focusing,
it starts out exactly like Solar Express.
Yeah. And except instead of, like, spending a lot of time on the different scientific aspects of, like, what something might be doing coming through Saturn or what kind of measurements they were taking, most of it was spent, like, with the main character going on to, like, nighttime talk shows and, like, yammering about it in ways that are not particularly interesting.
Oh, it was god, it was one of them.
Yeah. And
I won't say it's impossible to do that right, but
it could be done right. It wasn't done right here. It was done in a way that made me want to stop listening to the main character and go to a different point of view as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, my wishes were not granted.
Yeah, it's kind of like when they film movies like that, where it's just a loosely connected string of different clips of different appearances on television shows or radio shows to piece together the story. Kind of like diary fiction. Like, it can be cool.
Well, it wasn't,
and it can be good.
It wasn't diary fiction. It was, it was written from a disinterested third person narrator. But like, that's kind of the action of the first 30% of the book is like they're tracking the object, but we're spending more time listening to like such and such person on NPR talking about it in a dumbed down way to like people who failed sixth grade science. Like it's a thing in space and it's going towards Saturn and we don't know what it's going to do if it hits Saturn.
So
like,
so the hard science of dumbed down NPR.
Yes.
Which I know I'm repeating myself there, but
I mean it's like an emphasis. It's like putting it in bold. If you ever see NPR in bold or italicized, that means dumbed down. Just FYI. Yeah, and so like it goes through about the first 30% of the book tracking the object. Now, there's this part where it like goes behind Saturn. And you'd think that would be an opportunity for some like cool scientific hypotheses to come out and like people to like say, well, maybe it's this, or maybe it's this, or maybe it's this, or maybe it's going to do this, or maybe it's going to do this. And in fact, what happens, which again made me very like this person does not know actual like science, is that once it went behind Saturn, people kind of lost interest in it. Because I certainly know.
Wait, so the story wasn't about the science behind what was going on. It was about how people lose interest in things once it's not front and center.
Yeah, it was a fable
because that's
of
not
object
how
permanence.
hard. That's not hard sci-fi.
No, it's not. It's
That's like science fiction, like with a heavy emphasis on one particular social commentary.
Well, yeah, but like it doesn't get any better. Because
my God, it actually does sound a lot like Solar Express now.
Because like the thing goes behind Saturn and then it like disappears in the sense that it goes behind Saturn and it doesn't come out the other side. And so everybody's like, oh, it must have crashed, and like everybody loses interest which doesn't even seem to like be reasonable because like gravitational like slingshotting is a thing, and like if a body was traveling through space with an intended destination, it might use a body like Saturn or Jupiter to turn itself in a different direction. I mean, it's really quite... What's the word I'm looking for? Like, discouraging? Because there's even a part about, like, oh, if it gets too close to Saturn, it'll crash. But, like... And you could have gotten into a scientific discussion about, like, how the atmospheric density rolls off as a function of altitude on Saturn. You know, like, you could have done something scientific there and actually made it interesting. Like, oh yeah, like, you know, let's have this scientist go through a bunch of simulations of it going between various distances away from Saturn, and we'll watch as, you know, at certain distances you get this turning effect, at some other distances you get, like, the slingshot effect, and then as you get closer, that excess velocity trails off and starts to drop down, because something really interesting is happening. Basically, the object is starting to pick up on some of the, you know, hydrogen in the upper atmosphere of Saturn, or maybe helium or whatever, and it's starting to experience actual drag forces. But that's also interesting, because if this thing's experiencing drag forces and survives, that means that it's actually been, like, engineered to be something capable of re-entry into an atmosphere, which opens up a whole new set of possibilities for what this thing could possibly be. You see where I'm going with this?
I do, but there's actually so I'm seeing something that's a little bit funny here.
Okay.
Has science gotten so banal, I guess, in people's minds that our perception of science is that, well, this thing probably crashed and there's nothing really to look into here, and that's normal to people, and so they think that when you present things in this manner, it's hard sci-fi?
I don't know. I think the author just didn't know how to write like a scientist.
Yeah, I mean, because you don't have to nail it 100%. Even if you are a scientist, you don't when you're writing hard sci-fi. But like, this just sounds like, okay, this guy used the event to gain some fame and go on talk shows and talk about it for a while, which is part of the social commentary of the story. And then everyone lost interest when nobody could track it anymore, which is another part of the social commentary. And then we just ignored the fact that there were many things we could have done to... Like, it makes the story better at the very least if somewhere in there someone's like, hey, it shouldn't have not come out the other side based on all of our estimations and all of our simulations.
Or, even if it wasn't supposed to come out the other side, like they would say, it wasn't supposed to come out the other side. However, we also didn't observe the perturbations in the Saturnian atmosphere that we would have expected for something crashing into it. You may remember, it was probably 20 years ago at this point, but there was like a comet or something that like crashed into Jupiter or Saturn a while back.
Yeah.
And like it was like the talk of the town. People were like, "Ooh, look at what's going to happen. What's going to happen when this thing slams into this gas giant? Are we going to see, atmospheric disturbances? Are we going to see, a flash of light from it burning up? Are we going to learn that like whichever planet it was, I can't remember whether it was Saturn or Jupiter, but like whichever planet it was, are we going to learn that there's like a solid core to this planet a certain distance in? Are we going to get some neat spectroscopy data that's going to tell us something about the composition of the lower layers of this gas giant? Are we going to learn something about reality and about the construction of the universe from this? And like that's what real scientists and real, like not even scientists, but just like naturally curious people do when they're presented with an event like this, as opposed to the book where everyone's like, well, it's gone. See y'all later. Show's over.
That's all, folks.
Basically, yes.
They Porky Pigged it.
I mean, Porky Pig is entertaining.
Yeah, but our science is definitely porked.
Well, I mean, if this is any example, then yes.
It's bad enough. It's just bad enough that is someone's perception of science.
Well, I had this problem with that one book with the number stuff too. Like, the guy finally got his job doing numerical mathematical fun stuff, and he's like, oh, I don't know what to do. I have an office and I have access to every journal in the world, but I got nothing to do. And it's like, you don't know how to write a scientist. You really don't. And the worst part in that case was that it was Arthur C. freaking Clarke who absolutely knows how to write a scientist, but apparently the other author that he was working with did that part of the book. Because that guy apparently had very little actual intellectual curiosity. It's one of these. It's like the I effing love science group.
God, yeah.
Where like I treat this thing as dogma, and I possess no natural curiosity about it. I only wish to show like the occasional meme or neat thing that someone has said without critically examining it or even applying rudimentary understanding of the natural world to it, which is why they get things wrong so often.
And there are science fiction writers, probably. I mean, I'm going to just guess that this book was written in, like, 2017 or 2021.
It's fairly recent. Let me check.
Yeah, actually. It sounds like modern science fiction, where it's just like... Like, they're treating slice-of-life fiction as science fiction.
No, it's not even that, because it's like modern science fiction is quote unquote literary, right? Where they're like, oh, it's about the characters and blah 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 blah. And this didn't even have good characters. Like it had insufferable characters, and it had like meh characters. Published
so like modern science fiction.
February 1st, 2024. So it was published this year.
Well, we've come a long way.
Whoa. This was published 2024? Oh my god, he has 3 books for... Oh my god.
Are we sure that this stuff isn't just written by AI at this point?
It might be. It really might be, because he has, like, multiple books since then that are supposedly in his, like, science hard... He has the Mars
That sounds
anomaly.
A lot like it was written like AI. I mean, it's possible to write...
Oh my god, this might be written by AI. Because, like, because the object was published on February 1st, and the Mars anomaly was published on March 15th.
It's possible that this is a person who had a bunch of stuff written and decided to publish it all at once.
Maybe.
But it really because I've read, like, when the AI doesn't totally screw up to the point that it's hilarious and actually, quote unquote, gets it right, it's usually very boring. And not a lot happens.
Holy cow.
But I mean, it also sounds a lot like Solar Express, where it's just like, here's a slice of life story pretending to be a science fiction story. And it's not even a good slice of life story.
Yeah. So we've covered. I mean, like, this was the first third of the book, basically. The first third of the book was like, there's an object, and like we're tracking it, and then we lose track of it, and everybody kind of is like, oh, we're done. See you later. That's the first third of the book, and it's basically the main character going on like Jay Leno or whatever, and like saying, there's a thing in space and it's moving towards Saturn, blah blah blah, and it's like very. I mean, like.
Okay, so that's
lacks,
just wait. That's
it
just
lacks
the
all
first
sense
third?
of like curiosity. That's the first third of the book, yeah.
Just the news stuff, or is the whole everything you've told me up until now just the first third?
Up until now, yeah. The first third of the book is like, there's an object. I'm going on talk shows. It goes behind Saturn and vanishes.
Okay. Then what happens next?
Well, what happens next is that I think it's some small period of time later, the object comes out from behind Saturn.
Okay. I mean,
now, so like people are like, oh, it like stopped behind Saturn or something, or at least slowed down or something, and now it's going in a different direction, and it must have maneuvered behind Saturn, and it's getting closer to Earth, and we might actually get a chance to look at this thing. So we need to prepare to go look at this thing as it gets close to Earth. Right? That's the second third of the book. And the second third of the book reads like someone read a bunch of like how people prepared to go on the space shuttle books, and then and also Top Gun, and then put all that into and then put all that into the second third of the book.
We've got incoming, Maverick.
No, not that part necessarily, but like the kind of like dick measuring stuff.
Oh, well, I've never seen Top Gun, so
it's like oh, there's an entire section of the book, like an entire probably 10 pages or something like that I kind of had to skim. It was so painful to read, where like they had a drinking game contest where they had to answer questions about something, about like scientific things, and like,
well, these people don't know scientists at all, do they?
Well, these are not scientists anymore. These are the people that are getting prepared to go on to the spaceship to land on the object. So they're not technically scientists. They're, like
they're
space
pilots.
shuttle. They're astronauts. Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, of course they have scientific backgrounds, but like at the same time, like there's this awful, there's a bunch of like questions that are asked that are like seemingly at random from calculus and science textbooks, but like high school level, high school level, but high school level science and and mathematics textbooks. Like, and there's no apparent, like, number one, there doesn't appear to be any like rational like equilibration of like the difficulty of the questions. One of the questions is like a really like a moderately simple like integral that requires you to do integration by parts, and like then there's a question about like what pH means, and like it's so incredibly it's like a Texas sharpshooter where like there's a bunch of dots on something and someone draws a circle around the dots and it's like, see, I hit the bullseye. Yet the dots are all very far separated and none of them seem to make any sense or bear any correlation to each other.
Oh, did they do any of that? You ever see where there's like a scientist in a show and they answer questions from like 5 different fields with ease, and you're just like, they probably wouldn't have known all of those.
No, they don't do that, thankfully.
Okay.
I mean, the talk show portion is done pretty much by the second third of the book, but it's basically just a bunch of these like, astronaut jocks like mouthing off at each other and like trying to get trained in the most painfully dull way it's described, and like the other thing is that like I think the author like went to like Wikipedia or something like or for like the answers to these questions, because like the way that the person explains what pH is a way that no person would actually like answer what pH is. They actually use the word decadal, which I didn't know was a word, but apparently it is a word, but no one ever would use that to describe pH. It would be more simple to simply say it's the base 10 logarithm of something.
So this was written by an AI?
I'm thinking maybe it was.
It's
yes.
sounding more and more like this was like it literally scraped Wikipedia for this information.
I mean, the questions are so random and so out of place that, like...
Yeah, it's sounding a lot like... I mean, I don't want to accuse... I just find it funny that it, like... I mean, because it's entirely possible that modern science fiction has just gotten so mundane in its creativity that it manages to replicate how an AI would write science fiction.
Maybe, yeah.
But this sounds a lot like what an AI would crank out for a science fiction story. Like, I'm almost tempted to go and, like, see what would happen if I put in a few prompts for a science fiction story and read it and just be like, yeah, this sounds like modern science. This is what everyone's doing now. That's why it all sounds exactly the same.
Well, apparently Clark's World is having problems with that right now, so, they can't be bothered to take, actual handwritten science fiction, but they do need people that can help them figure out which ones of the most of their inputs are being generated by AI, which apparently is a lot of them.
Well, I mean, there was a time when I would have gladly been like, hey, do you guys want me to... I will write on paper and record myself writing science fiction if you want. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't think that anyone cares anymore.
No, I don't know. It was very... This second third of the book, I skimmed parts of it. I got to admit. Once they got to the third question, they're like, can you integrate by parts in your head? I was like, this is no longer fun. I need to go. It's like, I mean, I don't understand. And then making it into a drinking game with there's no comedy behind it either. It was very, it was so sterile, I think is the right word.
It sounds to me like they were mentioning hard science rather than, doing hard science. And that
No, because number one, the places where hard science were in there, it was done poorly. Like the Saturn thing. They're like, well, it shouldn't be able to get around Saturn. And it's like, that's not true. That's not what a scientist would say about it. They'd be like, well, we do have some error bars on how far it is from Saturn and how far close it's going to get, whether it's going to be in the orbital plane of the rings or, stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of cool things that you can say about something that's getting close to another planet and make some interesting, curious hypotheses about what could happen and talk a little bit about atmospheric densities and, the fall off of hydrogen density as you get closer to the planet and the potential issue of drag forces and what drag forces would do, at what altitude would they become significant. What can we if we see it come out and we see its speed altered when it goes around Saturn, have we learned anything about its shape, right? Like if something was shaped spherically or like a golf ball, right, it might go through the atmospheric drag losing less velocity than it was if it was disc shaped, for instance. There's all kinds of really cool little touches that you could put in if you were a human being writing this who cared about science and had any sort of curiosity or ability to come up with hypotheses at all.
I mean, maybe it's a fundamental thing.
Instead, we got, it went behind Saturn and we lost track of it. I guess we're done.
Yeah, so maybe this is a fundamental thing. Maybe modern science cranks out the type of scientist that is like the Tyrannosaurus Rex from Jurassic Park. It's like, ooh, there's a thing, and then they can't see it anymore. It's like, oh, we can't see it, so it doesn't exist. Which isn't quite how the T-Rex worked, now that I think about it. But
I kind of got object permanence when I was 2 or 3 years old. So I feel like hard science fiction should be written to a slightly higher level audience than that. But yeah. Oh god, it was insufferable. It was there's we have to do a written test to determine who gets to be the astronaut to go onto the thing, and then someone cheats and but the main character lets the person know that she saw them cheating, but she doesn't report them either, and it's
this isn't how no.
Well, number one, it was poorly handled because it was just the very cliched I know what you did. But you know, and I'm not going to do anything about it to show how high-minded I am.
We are landing on an asteroid. I do not want the person that cheated to be in control of anything.
Well, I mean, cheating on some minor written test for it is probably not as important as how well you're doing when you're actually trying to do stuff in the in the zero-G simulation tanks and stuff like that. Like,
fair enough, but there's still contention that, I mean, maybe I'm crazy for thinking so, but one of the things you have to deal with in space travel is like, ooh, here's like 4 people that are going to be stuck in a can together for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
It's like, trust is probably a good thing to have.
Right, well, so the main character was not supposed to be going on the mission. But through a series of predictable misunderstandings, she ends up going on the mission.
Predictable, huh?
I mean, kind of the thing that you're like, well, I mean, clearly the novel's not going to end when the rest of the astronauts leave and leave her behind. Like, clearly that's...
Yeah. I'm
pretty sure that's not going to happen. Plus, it would violate the author's like attempt to make her character feel highly qualified and intelligent and competent. But yeah, what happens is that the guy who cheated like breaks his ankle or something like that during one of their rehearsals, and like during the press conference where he's like saying, "Yep, I broke my ankle," he's like, "And now she's gonna go," and it's like she's like, "Wait, what?"
Wait, you can't just do that.
I mean, in this book you can, because
that's not how science works.
That's not how getting ready to go on a space shuttle mission launch.
I have declared her qualified.
Works. Well, yeah. I mean, there's a little more to it than that, because she's like doing the stuff along with them as like a... I forget what exact position she had. She wasn't exactly supposed to be an alternate, but she was like there as like some kind of like morale booster. I don't know.
So the cheerleader's going.
Well, no. I mean, the book is trying to portray her as competent.
Well, relatively speaking.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, so like, I mean, from what you're describing, it seems like this is someone putting the story together based on their view of science. So to them, maybe all of these people that are being written are competent.
Yeah.
But there's ways that you do that, especially in hard sci-fi, to make it a little more believable. And you
don't spend a third of the book quoting from space shuttle team preparation book, documents. That's not good either. Like read. You know what? I will tell you the one best thing that this book did for me. This book made me reread Rendezvous with Rama. Like that's what I kept thinking as I was reading this book. I'm like, I'd much rather be reading some Arthur C. Clarke, any Arthur C. Clarke, but especially Rendezvous with Rama, which is a fantastic little book.
Oh, hey, speaking of which, they're rebooting Ranma 1/2. They could have called it Rendezvous with Ranma 1/2.
Let's not do that.
I'm sorry. It just jumped in my head and I had to say it.
Okay, that's fair.
I'm like an AI writing a novel. It's just like, yep, I'll scrape this.
So there's one other fun thing that happens, and I put fun in scare quotes, but there's one other fun thing that happens in the second third of the book, is that China gets angry, and so like they swap out 2 of the people that are supposed to be on the mission with 2 Chinese people.
So it's Solar Express.
Maybe? I don't know. I haven't read Solar Express.
They didn't do anything with like swapping people out, but it was another one of them things where it's like, ooh, it's this nation and China and this nation, and I don't know. There was a bunch of that.
Yeah. So yeah, there was some political BS that happened. That's like suddenly they're like, oh, we're gonna put these 2 people in your team instead. And there was a little bit of tension about like whether they were gonna be like awful people or whether they're gonna be hard to work with or whatever. But they turned out to be just fine for what it was. And so like, yep, the team's assembled. And they launch, and they start to fly toward the object. And then
the last third of the book happens?
Well, not quite yet. Not quite yet. So on the way there, I think 2 people died. They were so forgettable that I can't remember whether it was 1 person or 2 people who died.
Hold on. After all the preparation for this important mission, on their way there, 2 people died.
Correct.
By what means? Because I feel like
one of them goes out on a spacewalk and gets a micrometeoroid through the head like a sniper rifle shot.
Okay, you know what? I'll let that one pass just because I'll let that pass.
I can't remember what happened to the other one. It didn't matter. But the point is that they're like, by the time they reach the object, they've lost a significant amount of people, on their in their mission specs, and like both of the characters who died are forgettable enough that it's like, wait, who died? And it happens very quickly and without any like.
And they just keep going on with the mission?
Well, yeah, they can't stop now. They don't have enough. I mean, they're on some kind of like suborbital path where they're gonna like go hit the object and then continue, on the object's trajectory, and that'll bring them back close to Earth so that they can maneuver back into Earth's atmosphere. But like, they can't stop the mission. But like, yeah, there's just like it's like this sudden like, she stopped talking on her radio. Oh, she's dead. What do you mean she's dead?
Do they have the corpses with them, or do they leave them in space?
No, they had to leave. They had to let.
Sniper wound was almost certainly left in space.
Sniper wound was left in space. Yes.
How did the other person die?
I don't remember. I think
forgettable.
I mean, it's not only do I not react to the character deaths, nobody else does either. Like you've been working with these people for like, months and months and months, and like she fucking gets a micrometeoroid bullet through the head.
She gets capped by outer space itself.
Yeah, and she's just out on a routine spacewalk to like flip a switch or something to like change a. No, she was out there to like put a little bit of insulation on something because they were losing water or something like that to condensation or something. Yeah, she just like, oh, I'm dead.
I am more and more convinced that this is written by a Chinese person using an AI to write several novels quickly and publish them, because that sounds so much like a Chinese novel. Like it was kind of like in The Three Body Problem. I mean, there were like Chinese novels are just full of these moments where someone dies and it's not that important. And just to kind of drive that point home, I used to work with a guy who he lived in China for a while. And he met a lot of people there and talked to a lot of people from other countries. And he met this one guy who was an engineer that was there to install a stamping machine at a factory. Mm-hmm. And he was setting up the safety gates, and he was trying to show the foreman where the safety gates are supposed to be and where people should walk and everything. And the guy was really rushing him. And so he was like, look, I have to show you this. I have to show you where people can safely walk. What if someone falls in? And he said the guy stared at him point blank and said, if someone falls in, we just get another worker.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, this is very indicative of someone, of like a Chinese person writing under a pen name. I mean, I don't want to say that's definitely it, but it sounds like that, because that is the way a lot of Chinese novels seem to treat death. I think the only exception I'm aware of is Chinese manga, where they actually, like someone dies and people actually tend to care. But they're usually romance stories or things like that.
Right. No, I mean, I'm reading Three Kingdoms right now, and it's exactly the same thing. Like, people die in... Important characters die in one line, and no one ever speaks of them again.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah, it's very strange.
So yeah.
Yeah, so they're on the way to the object. Someone dies, and... Man, it was just so bland. There was almost no, like... The only thing that... like... How can I describe this? The two Chinese characters were basically... One of them was basically silent, and the other one was a guy who was like, yeah, I'm not, like a crazy Chinese government agent kind of person. I'm a person and I think things, and I even refer to like a what do you call it? Like an aphorism at one point. And that was his character.
Huh.
And there, it was just like so. Yeah, it was just really weird. And so like that's the second third of the book, is them from the point where they start training the astronauts to the point that they land on the object.
You know what else this could be?
What?
I sense an author that had all these characters on a ship, and he was just like, I don't actually feel like writing the interactions for these characters. I'm going to off a few of them.
Yeah, I felt... I mean...
But I'm leaning towards the Chinese death hypothesis.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, the problem with that hypothesis is that if someone dies, naturally there would be a lot of emotional interaction based on that death, because people would be like, oh, but she was my friend, and even just basic stuff like that. Everybody having a little time to grieve. This is another thing that like modern media fails to do a lot, is like give scenes time to breathe for a variety of reasons. Like, main character discovers that his best friend from 30 years ago was just killed. We're gonna skip that scene. We're gonna cut that. It's not necessary. It's not part of the story. It's like, no.
It's literally the driving force for all of his motivation going forward.
Well, I mean, we're gonna kill him too, so it's fine.
Oh, well.
But like,
solves that problem.
Yeah, right. But it's a very bad solution to the problem, because basically you end up jumping from action scene to action scene to action scene, with no characters ever having a chance to interact in any meaningful way, other than like, I'm good at fighting, and I am also good at fighting, and we high-fived.
Oh, look, as a storyteller, your job is to avoid telling any semblance of a story as much as possible. And it should only happen if and when
a series of loosely connected action scenes can be a story. It's just that, it doesn't have a lot of like humanity motivation behind it. If you could replace all the characters with nameless androids and have them slap each other for a while, that would be just as good. That's a major problem. So
that's androids slapping each other.
So here's another thing, is that this book spends a bunch of time on like engineering minutia, where they're like talking about like, oh, there's this thing and it does this thing, and then there's this thing attached to it and it does this other thing, and it's all this cool engineering stuff, blah 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 blah. But like, whenever there's something that's like intriguing or like that you can't quite figure it out, it just glosses over it.
Oh yeah, that was the 3-body problem. That definitely.
Like okay, so the object is disc shaped. It's shaped like a pizza floating, toppings forward through space. All right, and they described landing on it. And the problem is that the object is rotating, and so there's like a centripetal force for landing on it that would make it so that you would fly off if you just tried to land on it, right?
Right.
And so, like, number one, they gloss over the part where they're like, oh, I think what happened is that they found a ridge that they could like press up against, and that it would take the stress off of their landing gear, basically, and also prevent them from flying off, right? Like, I think that's what happened. But the way that it was written was so vague that I just got this image of them like landing on the rim of it instead, which I know is wrong. Like, and so like, they land on the thing and they have these harpoons, and there's this one page thing about like, what if they see the harpoons as like, an attack and they fight back at us? It's like, well, we don't have any other way to land on the stupid thing, so we're just going to have to use the harpoons. Okay, it's harpoon time. It's all handled in the most superficial possible way. But they do manage to land on the object, and they do manage to not fly off due to the fact that it's rotating.
So harpoons were standard equipment for this thing?
They figured they were going to have to like latch onto it somehow, and they were going to have to like pierce the surface and latch on somehow to stay on. Because
they had a pretty good idea of it being like rotating and disc shaped, then, right?
Yes.
All right. So that alone tells me that the person who wrote this has got to be so lacking of awareness of what goes on in the scientific community that they weren't even aware that if scientists saw and mentioned a disc-shaped rotating object circling around Saturn, there would be at least 12 hillbillies that were monitoring it at all times and would have all of the information that the scientists apparently didn't care about after it went around the back of the planet, ready to give to the scientists when they came around and were like, we're going to do science again.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they don't ever look at any of the characters other than the main group for the most part.
Fair enough. I mean, that really paints.
There's very little actual like outside characters, and
that paints an in-depth world.
Yeah, totally. It's very well. It's like an expansive, detailed world of 6 people.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 5 people. 4. 3.
3. We get another. We lose another one later on, huh?
Oh, I mean, like we're only at the end of the second third of the book.
I'm getting this ominous feeling that the story is going to end with all of them dying and people on Earth never actually finding anything out, and the scientists just saying, "Well, screw it again."
No, it's way worse than that.
It's worse than that. It's worse than the bottom. That is the worst case scenario. that I could come up with in my head for what
maybe
made
it's not worse than that, but it's not much better. So the other, I just wanted to continue with like the engineering things, where they like spend a lot of time on like well-known engineering minutia, but when they come up with something like new, they like gloss over it. They have, in order to get into the object once they've landed, they have this thing that like is like a circular water saw or something like that they can like cut a hole in the surface and like make a manhole for themselves. And like how you would do high pressure water cutting in the vacuum of space is something that deserves explanation, and you do not get it in this book.
I mean, they are latched on with harpoons, so I guess anything is possible at that point.
Well, the harpoons make sense. You have a surface.
But I mean, it's like if your plan to latch onto something that is rotating in space is to do this with harpoons and reel yourself in and tighten your grip on this thing, it seems a waste to use something that is high pressure to blast into an object while you're attached and secure.
Well, the harpoons only make a space for the harpoon to catch into the body of the thing, right? They still need to make their way inside the hull.
Oh,
right?
okay. Wait. Maybe I'm thinking of this wrong. Are they using harpoons outside of the ship, or are they using them from the ship?
The ship has harpoons attached to it.
I'm sorry, not the harpoons. The high pressure water saw.
They get out and they walk around on the surface of the object.
And then they fire high pressure water saws into the
object. Bring a thing. It's like a giant machine that they carry out of the spaceship and like latch it onto the surface of the thing, and then it cuts a manhole-shaped hole.
Okay. That actually.
But it supposedly does it with high pressure water.
Yeah.
In vacuum, without explaining how that works. Which really was like I finished
it should have exploded, shouldn't
it? I was like, are 2 pages stuck together? Even though this is an ebook, like what the hell happened? Like they just suddenly had a water cutter out in space, and it's like, how are you recycling the water? Are you recycling the water? Do you have like 10,000 tons of water to use for this thing
because that's
cut
cheap
through an
to launch
unknown thickness of? Yeah, it's the energy consumption is also a problem, right? Like. It's not like they have like some kind of futuristic, fusion reactor that's giving them tons and tons of electricity.
It's just a giant Gatorade bottle attached to their ship.
I think it was partly that, but like they don't explain. But like it's still a water cutter cutting through goodness knows how much, like, call it steel, whatever it is.
I mean, maybe it's a super, super thin stream at a ludicrously high
but
PPI.
the force of the expanding water would like push things off and create all kinds of like dangerous like high pressure water droplets that would mess up with the people in their spacesuits that are made of flexible cloth.
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
Yeah, like it's one like I literally went back a page and was like, did I skip a page by accident? Because, like, it was that jarring to, like, oh, yeah, we just have a manhole cutter that uses high-pressure water. I'm like, but you're in a vacuum in space, and you don't have an infinite amount of water. You were just worried about a few liters of water getting lost. That's why What's-Her-Face got headshotted by a micrometeoroid. Like, guys, you're not explaining things that need explaining, and then they're just done with it.
Yeah,
like, okay, we got a hole.
Like, how much water is it going to take to cut a manhole-sized hole in something using high-pressure water cutting? I feel like that's going to be, like, at least 80 gallons, at least.
Probably something like that. Call it 100 gallons, or, but a lot of energy, too, and they're also not, like, the whole thing doesn't make sense. Like, it's just stupid. Like they should have just used, like, an angle grinder. Like, that would have made more sense.
Because it's weird because, like, they're going into space, and, they're trying to make this is supposedly hard sci-fi, and so one of the things you have to grapple with hard sci-fi when you're dealing with space is the load barrier, or the loads that you're sending into space, and especially when it comes to things like water, which your astronauts also have to drink, it doesn't seem like there's room to use that wastefully.
I mean, it depends on how extravagant your recycling facilities are, but yeah, you're basically right.
But it also means that their expectation for what they were going to have to cut through immediately jumped to, like, alien technology, and so we need a water saw.
Yeah.
When in fact it should have been, we might have to cut something. Here's an angle grinder.
Yeah, it really should have been like an angle grinder. That would have made a lot more sense. But instead, they did something that made absolutely no sense and explained it poorly.
Okay.
Which is kind of par for the course for this book.
And it says hard sci-fi on the cover. I just want to reiterate that.
It's literally the subtitle of the book. Like, if you look it up on Amazon, the title of the book is The Object, hard science fiction.
And the colons were many that day.
No, there's just the one in the title. And it... Like, you don't... It's not normal. It's not normal for you to put genre in your title of your book. I'm just going to say it.
Maybe in the description...
Imagine if, like, it was, like, Groundhog Day, a comedy.
That's how they'll reboot that series now. Or that movie.
Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, wand slop.
It is wand slop, isn't it?
It is.
All right, so they've water cut their way into...
They've cut a hole in the object, and they've
frisbee.
got a man-sized hole to drop into the object. Can you guess what they see on the other side of the hole?
They cut all the way through, and they just drop through the other side.
No.
Well, one can wish. What do they see?
There's like an empty space that's kind of large. Like, a couple of people can fit through it pretty easily. And like once every several minutes, there's like this huge amount of like viscous liquid or something that just goes through it.
But doesn't leak out of the new hole that they made.
I don't think it was described in the book.
Okay.
So they're like, cool, we got to go in there and we got to check this out, and we just got to make sure that we time things right so that we don't get hit by the thingamajig that happens every so often. And clearly they've waited there for a while, like at the manhole, just to see this thing happen more than once. They're like, okay, this happens every, X minutes, and we just need to watch out for that, right? Like, clearly they've been there for a while on the outside, looking at this manhole that they just cut, right?
Yes, and it sounds like not a single one of them is saying to themselves, I'm not climbing into the gelatinous disc.
Right. Well, it's their job. And they got nothing else, they got nothing better to do, and they got nothing to live for because they're not real characters.
Oh, right. Well, okay. As long as they're disposable, let's dive right in.
So you've got this situation where there's this potential danger, you've got this hole in the thing. What do?
Well, I mean, I would at least try to test some of the liquid to see what it is and if it's safe to go venturing into a disc that is full of it sloshing around. No. As a scientist, that is probably one of the things I would attempt to do.
I can't remember whether they just send everybody in there or whether they leave a couple people on the outside. It's that non-memorable. I'm pretty sure they left like 2 people on the ship.
All right, boys, hit the drink.
But they didn't like set up a wire so that they could like continue to communicate with each other. And like apparently their communicators are really really low power or something like that. And so, like, a bunch of people go down into the ship, into the object, and they're looking around. I'm trying to remember how this ends, and it was so stupid. There's a pulse that happens. One of the liquid pulses happens, and it hits somebody. And then there's like some like green. By the way, this is all spoilers at the end, guys. So, if you don't want to know what happened,
if you've gotten this far,
if you're really champing at the bit to read this book, you might want to stop here. But I don't know. Probably you don't, because it's not worth your time. It might be worth your 10 more minutes before we're done here, but like it's not worth your 2 hours spent reading this thing. Basically, some like little green crabs or something come out and they grab another person, and then they're like, "Okay, we got to get out of here." And then they get back to to where the manhole was, but the manhole's gone.
All right, well that explains the liquid not flying out at least.
And then. Well, I mean, no, because they definitely watched it through the manhole a couple times.
Oh, okay, so it should have definitely... Well, I mean, we don't know if there's atmosphere inside the disc. But we have to assume that if there's any sort of gas or any kind of thing in there besides the liquid, that the liquid is forcing air through various channels in this disc, and it should have forced something out.
I don't think it's handled very well. Because I don't remember whether there was, like... I'm pretty sure there was not like a gas jet when they opened the manhole, not a significant one. And it certainly wasn't something where they like had like a bunch of air floating out of the thing as they continue to look into it. Certainly not that.
Okay. So
like they've lost 2 more people, and then they're trying to get out, and and they can't get out because the manhole closed. And then one of the people that died, like, gets up and starts talking to them because guess what? There's two semi-interesting science fiction ideas in this book. Number one, the object is itself a living thing that was engineered by some alien race to fly around and learn things. That's number one. Mildly interesting sci-fi idea.
Okay.
Handled poorly. The other part of that interesting thing is that the reason that they have been unable to communicate with it is because it lives on a very long time scale, which means that it lives very slowly, whatever that means.
Yeah, I've seen that done before in science fiction.
Yeah, and so that's it. And so basically it's like, I was trying to talk to you in your dreams, but you couldn't figure out what I was talking about because you only sleep for 8 hours at a time. And 8 hours is only enough time for me to talk for, like, one word. So it's kind of like the Ents in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Yeah, so,
Yeah, I mean,
obviously the way that you handle it then is just to possess a corpse.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what they did.
With what I'm assuming is the creature's blood. I don't know how that works, but I guess it works.
These are like little crabs or something like that. I don't know what they were.
So the crabs are themselves a life form, not the object?
No, they're like cells of the life of the object's body, maybe? Or something like that.
Oh, so it I don't know. Maybe they should have given... So the space disc with chlamydia is possessing them with its blood to talk to them.
In their dreams, yes.
Yes, okay. Well, no, now it's talking to them in person.
Well, sort of, yeah.
It has two methods of communication. Telepathic dream talk and splashing you with blood.
Extremely slow telepathic dream talk.
Yes, and also splashing one of you with blood so that it can talk through your corpse.
Yes.
Both of which I consider valid.
Yeah, these are all valid ideas, yeah. And so, here's the problem.
I feel like that should have been the story.
Well, so here's the problem. If this object does indeed live, but just at a very slow pace, then it wouldn't have had time to heal the manhole cut that they made.
No, that happens almost instantaneously.
No, it doesn't, because they were looking through it for half an hour. And it didn't get noticeably smaller.
Almost instantaneously. There's a half-hour window, and then it's instantaneous. It's just done.
That doesn't make any sense, but okay.
I mean, does any of this?
No.
Hard sci-fi.
And then the way that the book ends is that the main character walks inside of its brain and goes to sleep with it. And then she sends her dreams out to the rest of Earth. Dreams of the object. And then we get like one scene at the very end where like someone is on like Neptune thanks to like the technological advances that they learned from talking to the object.
Okay.
And they hear the main character saying that she's going to be dying soon, and so is the object because of the cut that they made in it in the first place.
The cut that was healed.
Was a lethal wound. No, there was like a second one that like did some other thing. Like I forget exactly the details, but like they make two incisions, and like the first one like reacts a little bit, I guess, and then the second one does not, but except for the fact that it heals very quickly. But then the first one doesn't heal, but is lethal.
Okay, well, I mean, at the very least, I can say it's
the end.
Yeah. I guess it's not quite Solar Express because there was no closure to Solar Express.
I mean, there's closure. The main character dies with the object.
Yeah, and it
That's
does
closure.
Kind of... It gives a more interesting story in the very last moments of the book where it's like, yeah, this is what the story should have been about, but we didn't do that.
I would have been really fine with like the middle third of the book being like, this thing disappeared behind Saturn. What the hell happened? Let's get 10 scientists in a room and ask them to explain it. And we get 6 different answers. And, then they start fighting amongst each other and arguing. And that could be really interesting too. But they didn't do that. They're just like, oh, well, it went behind Saturn. We're bored. Let's go away.
Yeah. I feel like there's like a much bigger story in there where it's like what if the reason people dream is because of this disc? And everyone's dreams are just this disc trying to explain things to people, and so like because there's so many people have weird dreams sometimes.
No, it was once they got it within range, they all started having weird dreams, but they didn't get any information through the dreams because the thing could only say one word while they were asleep for 8 hours.
Oh.
And so, like, they were like, I just had this vague idea that something was wrong with my dream. And I had a similar dream. Huh, how about that? Ha ha ha. And then at the very end, they're like, yes, we were trying to talk to you in your dreams, but you guys live too fast.
I kept thinking the word carnivorous all day. I don't know why.
Yeah. So that was The Object. The only good thing about The Object is that it made me want to read Arthur Clarke's Rendezvous with Rama.
Yeah.
And I did, in fact. In the middle of reading The Object, I stopped to go read Rendezvous with Rama. And you know what I'm going to note is that Rendezvous with Rama is 60,000 words and does way more with 60,000 words than The Object does with 100,000. There are parts of Rendezvous with Rama where it's almost poetic, where you're like, wow, this is not just like getting things across that are interesting. This is also doing it in a way that, like, I'm kind of a little bit floored at how nice and beautiful the language is.
Yeah, Arthur C. Clarke is good for that.
Yeah, whereas there were parts of The Object where I was like, I'm going to skip this page because the characters are being insufferable, and I don't want to listen to them being insufferable. Because that's the only character development that we get these days, is characters being insufferable. When someone dies, we don't get to see them grieve. No, but we do get to see that this one guy cheated, and that he noticed that someone noticed he was cheating, and that she had superiority over him because she knew he was cheating, but didn't tell the authorities about this very important mission. And then he got back at her by when he broke his ankle through an unrelated mistake, basically walking up to her and raising her hand up in the air like a boxer and saying, "You're the new astronaut now."
Now you're gonna beat a worm face.
And then they went out in space, and one of them got shot in the head by space. And then they went into, then they hooked onto a pizza, floating topics first through the air, through the vacuum, and then they all died, except the ones that were on the ship, I think, because I think there was a couple of people still on the ship
who eventually died.
Like,
well, yeah. What happened to them?
There's a scene where she's like, "You can't get to me in time. You just have to let me go. It's all right. I can talk with this thing. I've learned to speak to its dreams. Everyone else is dead, but I'm all right here, and you guys need to go back to Earth." And that was it.
Oh, roger that. Are you high?
Extremely high. I got some of the liquid up my nose.
Well, that is something.
I don't know why. I don't know how a book manages to get written. Book like this manages to get written, and I know even less how a book like this manages to make its way to the bestseller list in hard science fiction.
Oh, that bestseller list doesn't mean anything. I mean, I think you brought this up last time, where it's like,
no. I'm not saying like no, because like it wasn't there for like a day or 15 minutes. It was there for months.
Fair enough. That is something that also happened with The Three Body Problem. It was a very, very popular book, and a lot of people that read it were like, "Yeah, this is the stuff. This is real sci-fi." And then I read it, and I'm just like, I don't think people know what science is anymore.
Or fiction.
Oh, definitely not fiction.
Or science fiction.
or CCP propaganda.
Also, yes. I don't know. It was a slog. And like, it does so little in 100,000 words that like, I was like, I don't need this page. I don't need this page. I don't need this page. And then I get to a point where like, wait, did I miss a page? I didn't miss a page. They just skipped. They're glossing. They're glossing over that.
This is a huge problem with especially modern science fiction right now. Like you called Harry Potter wand slop, but at least that's a story. Modern science fiction is just plain word slop.
Yeah.
And there's like an idea or two in there, but it's just like, well, I got to drone on for about 70 pages because there's really not much story here, and I have to at least make it look like a book. Like I think a lot of modern science fiction is coming from people's inability to accept that maybe they should just be writing a short story.
Yeah, I mean, short stories are less profitable.
I have one idea. It must be a book. No, it could be like 3 lines of poetry. I'm not even kidding you, dude.
This is just the cask of Amontillado in space.
That's actually a really good way of putting it. But it's the cask of Amontillado if he locked himself in. If what was his name? Guy Montague?
I don't remember.
Yeah, if he locked himself in, that's what it is.
Or if like the wall like reconstructed itself by its own power.
No. It's the cask of Amontillado if Montague locks himself in, but then sends everyone good vibes.
Yeah, basically. And we all know that the cask was a short story, and this probably should have been as well.
Yeah.
And in fact, it probably shouldn't have been. There is a place for like training montages. You have to make them fun and interesting. What?
It had a training montage?
Yeah, that's what the whole second third of the book was the training montage.
Oh, yeah, I guess it would have been, wouldn't it?
It was an extended training montage. It should have been like 3 pages, but instead it was 70 or 100. And
you need a montage.
It took a lot of like really banal information from the astronaut's guide for getting ready for a space shuttle launch and vomited it into my computer as part of this book. And then there was a really stupid like drinking game quiz, and then there was the cheating scene, and then there was the main character getting her hand raised up like a prize fighter. You're the astronaut now, dog.
I feel like I want to write a parody of this book where like it's the exact same story, but every like 6 hours, someone just falls to their knees and says, "Praise the gods," and then they stand up as though nothing happened.
I mean, look, the cask of Amontillado is in the public domain. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I've got. Like, wherever there was an opportunity for some cool science stuff to get happened, it was incredibly poorly handled. You could make prep and training for astronauts fun, and there was a lot of detail there, but it was written in such a way that it was not fun, and also it was infuriating because of the smugness of it. Like that whole like drinking game quiz, I think was basically just like the author saying like, look at these answers that I found look at these questions and answers that I found in a mathematics textbook. Aren't I smart? And it's like, no, you're not smart. You pulled those out of a freaking textbook.
Well, ChatGPT pulled them out of a textbook.
Maybe. Considering the way that this guy puts out novels, like 100,000 word novel per month and a half.
Yeah, I'm really 50-50 on it. It's like, did he have all of this prepared and just I mean, maybe he wrote one really, really, really long thing and cut it up into what he thought were sensible pieces.
No, because the second thing is about like being on Mars or something. It's completely unrelated, but it's still called hard science fiction.
All right, but it is possible that someone just had a lot of stuff ready, and also like
maybe.
I mean, if there's like a 3-month difference between each one, you can write a novel in 3 months. You could do it in a month and a half too.
Well.
But I feel like that's being too generous, given how much information you would have to randomly look up to do some of the scenes, maybe?
Yeah, no, I mean, you can't do hard science fiction super fast, because you need to actually look things up.
Well, he didn't, but that is neither here nor there.
But, like,
but it's possible that all of these...
That's part of the problem.
It's possible these were just books that someone wrote, like, 5 years ago and was just like, I'm going to publish them all now, like 1 month after the next. But most people don't do that. It seems almost silly that someone would.
People don't do that normally, and like, I don't know.
I mean, maybe it's like
when I was reading this, I didn't think it could be AI generated, but now that you mentioned it, it does seem like it definitely could be.
I mean, I'm leaning more towards that. I'm just trying to like make the case that maybe it's not, because I don't want to accuse anyone. It feels like it is all. And
well, like the problem is that if you write a book and the quality is such that someone says, yeah, I could see a ChatGPT writing this, without too much human editing going into the final product, then that's a problem. But you're right. It does feel like that sometimes.
I think...
I don't know. I don't want to accuse anybody either, but like at the same time, this was not good. And yet somehow it was incredibly commercially successful for hard science fiction. And also it made me realize that you can't actually make money writing science fiction at any reasonable pace on Amazon.
Yeah, there's... I'm trying to come to terms with what people actually read and are entertained by, and I feel
Right.
I feel like I mean we're just the outcasts. Like we have taste, and the rest of the
Apparently.
scientific reading community just
But like,
will read
but like,
whatever is thrust in front of them.
but
Like so many
I
people
love
at a
reading
McDonald's.
Clark and Asimov and Bradbury and Crichton. Like, what happened in the last 30 years that the audience for science fiction went so poorly?
Do you want the real answer to that, or are you just asking rhetorically?
Maybe a little of both.
Cronyism invading the science fiction writing community and taking over all of the outlets before people started switching to traditional publishing, and essentially it all became very nepotistic for a while, and all the good people left, and so there's just not good science fiction anymore. It's
sad,
it's not that it can't come back. It's just that the current system for introducing people to science fiction is so spaghettified that you can't actually... there's no like direct chain from like I wrote good science fiction to the reader's eyeballs right now.
I see. That's interesting.
There were just too many people that filled spaces and did nepotistic things, and that is falling apart, thankfully. But
Yeah.
it still it's a wound that needs to repair itself, like a manhole-sized disc cut out of a rotating pizza in space.
Yes. All right, let's not drag this thing out any further. The Object is not a very good book. Whether it was made by AI or not. Probably not.
And let's
that's
be
even
fair
scarier.
to the author. It's not a very good book, but apparently a lot of people either enjoyed reading it or suffered reading it and didn't complain that much.
Bought it and thought this was really cool.
So I don't know if you feel like
so maybe it's just me. I don't know.
Yeah, this did not in any way entice me to want to read The Object, so I won't.
I
be
mean,
doing
if you're
that.
starving for engineering with a little bit of hard sci-fi backing, you might give it a look. Otherwise, hard pass. Hard science fiction pass.
Yeah, the passing.
Indeed. All right. Well, this has been the Wordy Pair Podcast, another half-blind review, this time of The Object by Joshua T. Calvert. As always, I'm Rudy.
And I'm Justin. Just in incredible awe of how ridiculous science fiction is right now.
It really, truly is. Because, well, I don't know. The other hard science fiction books that were really popular are called the Murderbot Diaries, which, I mean, I've heard they're good, but that doesn't strike me as actual hard sci-fi. I guess I'd have to read them to find out. And I'm going to do that someday, but not today. All right, everybody.
My dog is also telling me that we may have to do some more book reviews soon.
Yeah, that sounds good. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and we will see you all next week.
Thanks for listening to the Wordy Pair Podcast. Our passion is all things writing, world building, and getting into the weird and wonderful world of fiction. We hope you enjoyed our unique takes. If you did, make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to get your weekly dose of writing weirdness. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, hit us up on Twitter. For Rudy, it's @Rudolph_Cone. And for Justin, @Ninja Mouse Chew. See you next time on the Wordy Pair Podcast.